The Spoken Token is a proud member of the Pod Studio One podcast network.
Hello, everyone. It is Future Larry bringing some corrections. At this time, both Alex and I get in on the fun. During the show, I misspoke and stated that the version 2.1 rules to the game Space Infantry, designed by Gotardo Zaccani and published by Lock and Load Games, costs $70+. This is incorrect. This fine rules update can be had from the publisher for $39.99. My apologies for that mistake. Also, Alex misspoke when he stated that Mice and Mystics by Jerry Hawthorne and published by Plaid Hat Games was all there is to that system. This is not the case, and the very expansive Downwood Tales expansion can be had, as of the time of this recording, at $74.95 from the publisher's website. Again, our apologies to everyone who may have been affected. Now on with the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome into the big show. I am Larry Neal.
Hey, and I am Alex Wallace.
And we are the Spoken Token Podcast. Mr. Alex, sir, how are you doing?
Oh, Larry, I am so excited. We are one episode away from one of my favorite times of the board gaming year, at least for us.
Oh my gosh, it takes on such a crazy cool meaning this year, but you're absolutely right. It is. It's so cool because we get to hit board game summer, which is what it is.
Yeah.
Because, you got all the conventions. It's board game summer.
Yeah, it's board game summer.
And then it goes into my favorite overall, non-necessarily gaming-related time of the year, the holiday season.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, forget you, January through May. We just don't have time for you. You are not as good as your the second half of your year.
Hold on, man. So, my birthday's in the month you just named. Wait a minute.
Yeah, what? So what? It's not. That's the one happiness blip in those months.
I can't say so what, because I wouldn't be here without that month and that day. So that's the greatest month ever for me. I just have to admit.
Fair enough. All right. Well, yeah. So we are one episode away from our Summer of Games, and so this episode, we are actually going to give you the prelude to the Summer of Games.
Hold up, man! You ain't told anybody what's going on with you yet. What's going on with you, man?
I know, but I'm just letting them know. I'm excited.
You are excited.
Yes, I am. Well, the big thing I have, I finally got to play Ark Nova.
Ooh, what'd you think?
So I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it.
Okay.
My first playthrough, I experienced some of the one of the negative aspects that a lot of the community have sort of kind of been putting out there, and that's the swinginess of the game. And so Luke and I played. We played a 2-player game.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah, it was great, and we learned it. Actually, we learned it pretty quickly. I thought that it would be
the two people you just named. I'm not surprised at all.
That's true, but again, it wasn't as dense as I was at first expecting.
Okay.
And so it played really, really clean.
Okay.
The first couple of turns were a little baffling because we didn't really know what to do. So we were just kind of like poking it with a stick, trying to figure out what you wanted to do. But then, turn 2 or 3.
Is it alive?
Yeah, for real.
Okay. You stand right there. I'm going to get ready to run, then poke it.
Once we kind of got moving, I mean, it flowed incredibly well. I definitely prefer it to the original Terraforming Mars. Granted, I still love...
You prefer everything to Terraforming Mars.
No, well, I love Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition with all of my heart. But
like
this fills that like big board kind of manipulating things type of deal that Terraforming Mars did.
You know what? I just had a thought. Maybe I'm anti-space D-theme.
So what, space what?
When people de-theme a space game that originally came out, hey, we're gonna have a confession moment with Larry.
Go for it.
I just instantly, when it's a D-theme from a space original game, in my mindset, even before I play it, I can't stop myself.
I understand. That makes sense. Yeah.
My first thought is, I don't want to play that version.
Yeah, I want to be in space. Put me in space.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the space version.
But
of course, where we are, where you and I live,
yeah,
I do have to go catch myself saying, "Oh man, I need to play it."
I'm gonna say this.
It's not the right attitude, even though it's not space and it's stupid sheep. Now
it's not sheep. There's actually no sheep in the game.
I'm talking about another game, and anybody who can figure that one out, if you hit us up on social media and the answer's right, I will send you something.
Okay.
I'm not giving no more hints than that.
So it's a de-spaced It's a D-themed space game that has been replaced with some type of sheeping. All right.
No, man, don't give them no more hints.
No, I just reiterated what you said.
I'm going to cut it out in the edit because I don't want them to have no more hints.
As far as Ark Nova is concerned, I think you can own both, absolutely, because they do enough differently.
Sure.
But I also think it can scratch that Terraforming Mars itch because they do have a lot of things that are similar. I feel like there is more to do in Ark Nova, and not just from a fiddly standpoint, but actually that are meaningful.
Fiddly, I like fiddly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. But my experience, I did. One of the big criticisms of the game is that it can be pretty swingy, meaning that like just on a turn or two, someone can just blow up and be super ahead, and which is the case for me.
Ahead.
Yeah, and so I leaned into a particular strategy, and it was not as lucrative as Luke's strategy.
And, shocker.
Yeah, true. But it was. I still enjoyed myself.
It's good to know that we've got people that if you just want to get stomped in a game, there's people we can go to and play. You know what? You know what? My esteem is getting a little too high. I want to feel like a 7-year-old sitting at a table of adults. Hey, Luke, let's play anything. Oh, you know what? Dave, Austin, come on, guys. Yeah, let's just pile on.
Yeah, you and we are the bottom of the barrel of our friend group when it comes to winning things. So
like I want to have a losing streak of 104.
Yeah. So, but no, I really enjoyed it. I think I think it deserves the hype that it has. I think it's going to be when you talk about top 25 games from now until whatever. I think this one's is in the contention for that. It's going to be one of those that really is sort of an evergreen title. I was really pleased. Again, my first playthrough, I sort of felt the criticism. I think the sweet spot's going to be at 3 players. I think you play 4-player, it's just going to be 2.5 hours of people not talking because it is pretty solo focused.
That sounds like Nirvana.
Yeah, I will say this. Our playthrough, even learning, only lasted 2 hours. I can see why a longer playthrough is a lot of people are saying it took us 3 hours. It was really long. I could see how that would happen. But honestly, if you have people who are knowing what they're doing, it's not out of the normal, gameplay time. So
cool.
I know just one of the things I've seen a lot of people saying is like, "Oh, it takes forever."
Again,
it does if you have people who are holding things up.
And I want to know who these people are. I mean, if you're not at a convention, right, and you don't have a serious schedule to keep, where you got to go? You came to play games. What difference does it make if you got 4 hours to play games if you spend all 4 hours on one game? Mm-hmm. And I get it. It's down to personal preference. I totally understand it. My thing is, depending on the circumstance and the situation, if that's what looks like it's leaning towards, then I feel like you, as the outlier, should just make the tough decision to not play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of trying to steer the group away from that game, or instead of joining it and then complaining at the 2-hour mark, like, come on, guys, can we just call it and play like 9 other games? It's like, dude, no.
Yeah.
Just no. But anyway, that wasn't what I was going to rant about. I was going to say, I haven't been able to play as much. That's going to change hopefully tomorrow, thank goodness, with work. But there have been a few acquisitions, yeah. Yes.
Hey, I actually picked up a copy of
been a few.
Alhambra at a flea market.
I love Alhambra. How much? Yeah, I know.
Well, I've never played it, but you just keep talking about it.
You never played it?
No, I've never played it. We keep talking about it. So so here's what I got at a flea market last weekend. It was amazing. I got Alhambra. I got Smartphone Inc. with the expansion.
Holy moly!
Yeah, and then it was at Game Point, but then it's when I picked up Ark Nova. But then I I found a new in-shrink copy of Camel Up, which Cynthia and Jackson and I played at Tennessee Game Days.
Yep.
And we loved it.
I remember,
we loved it.
No, that's really cool. You know what's funny? I saw that post about the Game Point thing like that night.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man, I would have driven down for that. That's pretty cool.
It was, I give it to Rick. Like, it was top notch. There was a lot of good quality stuff there.
Cell phone Inc. I've been wanting to try that one. Smartphone. I think a lot of people, it's kind of like the one with the pipes. I think it was really trendy. Mm-hmm. And then people got it, and they're heavy games.
Yeah.
So it was like, that was kind of an experiment where heavier games made it into the
it's basically an economic simulator.
So a lot of people unloaded it really quickly.
Yeah.
This isn't good at all. It's fantastic.
And
it's just not Monopoly.
It's got a really cool action selection mechanic that
Cool.
we can talk about later. All right, so I have one more thing that I'm really, really pumped about, and it's actually a preview into what we're going to be talking about for the Summer of Games. But the game that I have just been waiting for on pens and needles is shipping in the next week or so, and it should be at my house. And that's Stars of Akarios. I've talked about it a lot. It's just a space Gloomhaven thingy that you combat and Earth exploration, and
it does have space. That's cool.
Upgrading things and beautiful little miniatures, and they're actually working on a fully voiced narrative companion, so that all the story missions are read to you, just to kind of
do I need to save some space on this shelf right off my camera for that?
Absolutely no. I'm going now. If I play through it and I love it, then I will maybe allow you to enjoy it myself. But no, this one I'm pumped. I'm ready. It's gonna this one's mine. Don't even.
You guys heard it.
That's right. And I still think I bought the mat too, because I remember you were like, listen, I'm gonna get this, so go ahead and buy the mat.
Get the mat, man. Yeah, just go on and get the mat, so I don't have to worry about it.
So, all right, well, that is what I'm excited about, and it maybe piques your interest into what we're going to talk about after the break. But Larry, I am brimming to the edge, the tip of the whatever. I'm falling. I'm ready. I've got all the excitement.
You took the whole intro. Yeah,
I did. It's just let's go. So let's go. Let's play some music.
Away.
Let's play some music and get this baby started.
Tinkle, tinkle, bloom, 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 bloom. Oh, you meant music. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into the big show. This time, Alex and Larry dive deep into campaign-style games in anticipation of our upcoming Summer of Games 2022. We talk types of games, strategies, and unravel some of the code words associated with the genre. Alex and Larry then share their picks to play, their opinions, and so much more. So, sit back, relax, press the plunger down on that French press of coffee, and turn us up as we join your hosts, Alex Wallace and Larry Neal. And we are back. Welcome back in, everybody. So, what we're getting ready to do is, those of you who've been with us for any amount of time, or at least this time last year, during the summer, we kind of theme all of our shows, and we like to say that it's the Summer of Games, and we go through and we talk about various different things. We pick a theme, and then at the end of those shows, we always give you a couple of game suggestions to go out and get at the end of listening to it, just something to go and play right then and there. So again, Summer of Games. We want you to play games, and it's interesting, when Alex and I were working on the show this time, he said something that I felt like it is part of our DNA. And what he said was, I didn't point it out to him, but I made note of it. And he said, the goal is we want people to play games. That's the goal. We want to get people. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He's like, yeah. We want to get people to play games.
How profound of me.
Yeah, I'm like, that is foundational, and it has been. It's been right there in front of me the whole time. So that's one that I'm going to.
Because honestly, I think, why else would people want to listen to us other than just I never thought about that game.
Well, there's reasons. No, because my commute is 2 hours sometimes in the morning, and so I've taken to downloading some gaming podcasts and a few others, and I mean, you just there's some that is interesting people. There's a lot of different reasons, but
so, all right, okay.
Our reason is we want people to be able to do that too, but we also too we want you to play. We want people to play games. So it's not quite summer yet, obviously. So we're not.
That's why this is the prelude to the Summer of Games.
This is the prelude. We're going to talk about as one big segment this show, but I'm really excited about it. Alex laid it out really elegantly, so I'm excited to get into this a bit. It's Under the Hood is what we're putting it under. And what we do on Under the Hood, we like to roll up our sleeves and we talk about games from the perspective of their mechanics. So the mechanisms that are present, and then we cover what some of the buzzwords may mean, and or in this instance, we're going to get a little bit into how to interact with them, which is a little bit extra in the segment of Under the Hood. But again, it's all lined up to be a preview for Summer of Games that is coming up. So we're going to talk about some things this time. We're going to talk about some summer games that you can have epic campaigns with.
Epic campaigns.
There's a soundbite.
That's right.
And what we're going to do, we're going to look at doing best campaign games for 1 player or solo, and then 2 to 3 player, and then 4 to 5 player. Those are 3 different categories where we're basically going to give you 3 super good lists, top 3, our top 3 for those. But we want to get into a lot of stuff here. We want to get into the hallmarks of the campaign games, the fact that they have progression and narrative driven. We're going to go down these a little bit slower, and we'll talk about them.
Yeah, you're reading off my notes, my man.
We're gonna get into things to consider about them, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about campaign versus legacy. How we break this down will be in the show notes, so if you want to follow along there, we will have some form to the madness. Then make sure you pull up the show notes and follow along with us when we move from topic to topic. So, Mr. Alex, sir, since again, man, you kind of laid this all out for us, why don't you go on and get us started?
Yeah,
and get us going.
Absolutely. So, a campaign game is most, I would say typically you are looking at a game that is meant to be played over multiple sessions, and it involves things like progression. There's a narrative story-driven arc, or at least a connectivity between each of the scenarios and or segments that you play.
Yep.
And so why even play campaign games? And I think there's this really great market now. Number one, you have some amazing experiences in the campaign genre, but also too with the ubiquity of video. I just like the word ubiquity.
I don't know what that word is.
Oh,
man.
That's okay. Thesaurus is not working for me today. But no, the prevalence of video games that have a story-driven structure and, with character progression and those kinds of things. But then sort of this resurgence of tabletop gaming, and also a resurgence of role-playing games like TTRPGs.
Yeah.
There were numerous campaign-style games where, like, in one box or series of boxes, you can pull out sort of a base game and then start an actual story arc. And for me, I think campaign games are mostly identified by the fact that they tell one cohesive, epic narrative. Now, not just like a narrative game, so something like Arabian Nights, where you're just walking around and then the story is created while you play. But for me, like, each scenario that you play gives you a piece of this larger sort of designer-intended story. And how you get through it, and you move through beats, and there are climaxes and resolutions and all of these things. And so that is probably for me the hallmark of a campaign game. And I would, just to kind of come back on the backside of that narrative is then supported by actual player progression. So your player, your player piece or your player character or whatever, as it moves through this narrative, that character grows in some way. Either they lose things, or they gain in strength, and so they are morphed into something that is different than when you started. And so for me, those are the two sort of touchstones. The most important things when I think of epic campaign games that I also believe sort of defines what a campaign game is.
And I agree pretty much with all of that. I don't have any points on that I disagree with. I do believe that there are a few examples. That's why I was thinking about. I was laughing. There was a game that came up when I first started working on the list that I didn't put on my list, but looking at that and understanding now a little bit better your vision and agreeing with it, there's a game that I didn't include that I could have, because it absolutely does that. It does it a little bit differently. The narrative campaign. The game is based off of a campaign game.
Okay.
The game that it's based off of, it's a board game adapted from a video game. And that is the way that game was. It was a campaign-driven game. Well, the board game can be absolutely played the exact same way.
Okay.
And it's laid out in the rule book that you play it that way. But you don't have to. Obviously, you can just pick sides and everybody can go at it. And the game is StarCraft.
Oh, StarCraft has a campaign.
It plays like the video game.
Really?
Yes. It's designed to play like the video game. So you can basically set up, you and I could sit down with 2 or 3 other people over the summer and say, we're playing a game of StarCraft just like we would on the computer. And whatever section of space that we're saying that we are disputing, every game leads to that. And the progression does, you can keep it going in terms of your units and your characters. There's a bit of, in that game, things start over in the video game. Mm-hmm. So when you move to a different map and you progress on that map, and then when you go to the next map, you still kind of start over. So that part is still there, but I mean, it's a that's what that game is a campaign game.
You know what? And what I think is really interesting, what you just brought up, is that numerous games actually have a quote unquote campaign module. Like the game was designed to be played in a singular session. So like I'm thinking all of like the D&D board games, those D&D in a box, like Wrath of Ashardalon and Tomb of Annihilation and Castle Ravenclaw. Those are Ravenloft. They are meant to be played in a single session.
Who is Ravenclaw?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're meant to be played in a single session, but at the end they do have addendums for campaign play. Yep. And a lot of games have those. But they're not necessarily well thought out. Here's a way that I could play this in a unique way. And I ain't
gonna fire that shot across every designer's bow.
Well,
but I hear what you're saying.
As a designer, I appreciate it, because if you really love a game, it is a way to get even more out of said game. I mean, I remember, what was it? Freshwater Fly has a season that you can walk through, and so there's a campaign of like, okay, here you're kind of fishing for this and you're doing that. So there's I appreciate when people do it, but I think what we're going to focus on specifically for this summer is games that were built with the campaign in mind. So the campaign is not on the end. It's not just the part of the rule book that you ignore. It actually is the predominance of the rule book. Is meant to be played. When the designer focused in, it says, okay, we want you to start here, and then we want you to move in this direction, opposed to hey, here's some ways for you to kind of to move through that. So let's kind of move on to our next segment, and things to consider when actually beginning a campaign a game. Go ahead.
So this one's pretty big. So a lot of the bigger box games that we're talking about, or should I say they are big boxes, they do tend to cost a bit more. I mean, the average price of board games has gone up, specifically in the last 5 or 10 years. But these games typically do cost more. But I will be honest with you, it's because there's so much in the box already.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot in the box. So the thing, the cost of entry, what you need to think about, understand that if the average price now is about $60, which is about where it stands, you're going to be looking to pay about $80 or $90 for these. Okay, and again, that's just to get into the cost of entry. So they're going to cost a little bit more, but they've got a lot more content than standard. You quit doing that.
No, it is. Larry and I are fighting over our outline here.
It was in line, and then you just made it out of line.
No, it's not meant to be in line. It's meant to be an under this thing that we're about to talk about.
Oh, okay, my bad. So I'll let you fix it. Yes. And so expansions is the next thing about it. It depends to.
So I mean, just the cost of entry is a huge barrier.
And you need to be. Well, I don't know if it's huge. It's just something that you need to be prepared for.
Okay, you're right. Not a barrier. Yeah, good point. I mean, but it is because someone may be like, listen, I got $300. I'm gonna get it all.
I mean, $20 more. I mean, may make a difference. Now, this what the expansions is a little bit trickier because you get drawn in by theme. You get drawn in by artwork and publisher and designer and all of that stuff. And you're like, and then you get it, or you're blindsided. You're like, this looks cool. I'm just gonna buy it. You don't know any of those things. Yeah. Either way, and then you get it, and you either love it. And you want as much of it as you can inhale, or you're lukewarm on it or don't like it. You got to understand before you go, if it's a campaign game, just take a look out there if you've got the time to see where the expansions are and how easy are they to obtain.
Yeah. And so things like, the Arkham Horror LCG, and we've talked at length about it here but it's one of those that when you pick up, you're only getting 3 scenarios to the original campaign.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, now if you want to continue this story, you're buying $11 packs, $30 packs,
and that's the business model for that game.
Right. And I get that. It makes sense. It really does. Yeah. But that's one of those things, like if you're going to get into it to really tell the story, specifically with Arkham Horror, like you had to buy an entire cycle. So it was almost like 6 or 7 products over a, a 6-month cycle.
And while that fits what we're talking about, it's almost a little bit of a different animal because again, that's their business. That's that particular game's, that's its design ethos. I mean, it's designed it that way.
Absolutely. But that is something to consider when you're walking through. Also, another thing that came to mind was Descent, 2nd edition. So I don't know much about 3rd edition right now, but I do know 2nd edition.
I'm going to see it on 3rd now, yeah.
Yeah, but Descent is like, there is a campaign to play through in the original box. It's on the medium length side. So like you can play it once and feel satisfied by the end, but there is so much expandable content for new stories. Cause I mean, Descent is outside of other few handful of games, Descent is pretty much the closest thing that I think you could get to like D&D 3.5 in a box.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it is pretty cool. It's pretty expensive.
So it's Fantasy Flight, and it does a really great job of what it does, but it is very, again, focused on, all right, if you want more of the next story, then move. You've got to understand. Another game that is in that list but something like Mice and Mystics. I think Mice and Mystics is meant like it's just in the box. That's it. That's all that there is from Plat Hat Games.
It's got a pretty expansive book though.
Right, exactly. But it is, it's there, and so when you're getting it, like that's it. Like like this is. I think it has one No, Birds of the bird one is kind of just an
No, there was an expansion for it.
Okay, but it was one. So like when you buy that, like this is like I got everything I have is right here.
Yeah.
And then to an extent, Plat Hat did that with Stuffed Fables. Both of those are great at the younger audience because they're I would say they're almost family themed, and they both work great, but as far as cost of entry, I'm shelling out a one-time payment for this box, and I'm gonna walk through that story, opposed to something like an Arkham Horror, a Descent, a Lord of the Rings, the card game, Gloomhaven to an extent, though the upfront cost is pretty spectacular. I mean, average retail's about $120. Everything in Gloomhaven is all you need.
You can get it.
Oh no, it's still available now. I think it's.
I'm in at that price. So.
Yeah, it's still in print. And so, but again, at 120, 140, like the upfront cost is pretty significant, but you'll never have to buy anything, unless you want to buy a storage solution. So that's something just to consider.
That's one of those things. Yeah, this is what you're getting. So understand that, boom, you're getting a campaign game. You're not buying a flavor of Catan. You're not buying Isle of Cats. I mean, you're buying an experience that's meant to be shared, which kind of dovetails into the next set, which is group size. How big of a group?
Yeah, I think this is the key component to any decision one.
Yeah, this one for me is really tough because, just from experience, right? We have the people that are game group, and it's like, you may be able to get together with these people and play on a fairly regular basis, but just being realistic, are you going to be able to play this entire campaign with them? Mm-hmm. So for me personally, my own personal way to handle this one is it needs to have that one on the box. Mm-hmm. Unless I just want to own it. Like, with Star Trek Ascendancy, which isn't a campaign game, and I got it for a really good deal at Game Days a couple of years ago. And so I knew that they had some stuff. It's 3 and up, like 3 to 6 players. but I knew they had been talking about they were going to do some content where you could play it solo. And that's one I just wanted to own. And so I made sure I got the soloable content so I can play it by myself. But that's, for me, like I said, that's, so my advice to everybody on this one is when you're thinking about group size, if you've got your game group, and hopefully you guys do, maybe you're a new game group, you've been playing together the last couple of years, maybe you've been growing in the hobby together, which is extremely exciting and really cool. Try to be honest and be sober with everybody in terms of, hey, this is something you want to do, particularly if you're going to shell out for a Gloomhaven, or the other one that you have, Shadows of Brimstone, or any something, where you're going to put out a pretty decent amount. Try not to just spring it on a group unless you're just 100% sure that they're going to be like, yeah, let's do it. Unless you can play it, by yourself, or unless you're sure you're going to have one or two other people, at least where you can play 2 or 3 people through the campaign. So the group size is very, very, very important. And then, of course, the game itself. You never just want to do your math on that side. How does a game hold up with that? I know it's tough to know that for sure until you've played it at a certain player count. Research will help you. I'm a proponent of reading some things, but making your own decision. So go out there, go to the publisher's website. If they have a Discord, a lot more board game publishers are getting into Discords now, which is really cool. Go to the Discord, ask questions, hop on BGG, do your research in terms of saying, hey, does this game play really well at a certain player count? And then that will kind of maybe inform it. Maybe you don't need your whole regular group. Maybe you're 5 or 7 and maybe you only need 2 or 3 of them. But these are things you definitely want to think about if you're trying to do a campaign game. Because I'll say this right now, you're going to get the most out of it by playing all the way through it.
Yeah, and that's where I want to jump in is I think just be honest with yourself. You can get really caught up in the excitement of what this game has to offer. But if you're not meeting consistently with this, very particular group, or, maybe it's you and one other person and then a third person sort of rotates out or however, but that completely defeats the purpose of a campaign game.
And whatever consistently is.
Yeah, and you have, that is what you have to know when you're getting into it is, will I have a consistent group of players who will meet on a regular basis to walk through this story? Right. And regular, of course, can fluctuate, but because if not...
Like I said, consistent could be every other month. So
right. But
don't think we're saying you guys need to meet every week.
Right. If you can't meet that criteria, then you're going to shell out this money. You're going to play one game, and then then everything that you didn't think about, like, oh, well, these people didn't really like it. They're not really, they're not as committed as I am, and they just bow out. Now you're stuck with all of this content that you will never see. And so I think you just have to be honest with yourself. And I am preaching to the choir because campaign-style games, they are my favorite. Because I love narrative. I love character progression. I love and I just want all of the things. And but I, for the most of my board gaming career, I have not had a consistent gaming group. And the other thing to think through is you may have a consistent gaming group, but do they want this to dominate the gaming group time? So for instance, I have a board game group that meets at my house every other week. And if I were to say, all right, we're going to play this campaign game, and they're like, so every other week, our time is now dominated by that. And so be aware that that's a consideration to have. Even if you have a consistent gaming group, you're going to have to say, hey, I want to start this. Do you guys want to do it maybe outside of our gaming group or every other week, or, something those are just things. Just be really careful on the front end because you'll save yourself quite a bit of headache and honestly heartache, because there are things that I had that were narrative driven where I'm just like, oh, I just can't get this to the table. For instance, like Star Wars Imperial Assault. Like, I have all of it, and because I just love it so much.
Man, we played that whole campaign. What you talking about?
We played the original box, but I have all the expansion stuff.
Like, Dave closed the store, man. I don't know what to
but
tell
again, that was the thing. Is now, like, I just kept buying the expansions, thinking, oh, one day. But I am actually coming into.
He got addicted.
Yeah, I'm coming into the time now where my children are old enough, and so I have.
I've
got a built-in gaming group. I know all of the things that I told myself when I got something are now coming to fruition, which is really cool. And so I also think that's another thing to consider too. Like if you have a house full of gamers and you play things, I would encourage you to look at campaign style games because there's nothing else like it. It's so fun
if that's your thing.
But I would even suggest that even if your family isn't quote unquote your thing, there are campaign games out there that I think, like the Initiative.
I'm just bringing a separate viewpoint because I work with some people now where they absolutely just know.
Okay. Know your group, know your family. But I would say the Initiative is not necessarily. It's a campaign game, but it's not an RPG in a box. Or you have your Pandemic Legacies that are more traditional games, but that have a story in it.
It's kind of cool too. What you were talking about. Imperial Assault, and that actually leads to the next one. I wanted to move to this one because when I saw this one, this next one is table size, or we're going to say gaming space. I mean, you may not be playing on a table; you could be playing on a floor, you may be on the counter. So you want to make sure that you understand what you're going to need as much as possible. Now, this is one that's a little tricky because there's no way to know fully. Particularly, if you're, game one and maybe it's 12 games, 11 or 12 games in, you have no idea how much space each player is going to need. You don't know how big the board's going to be, some things we're going to talk about a little further on down on the list. But this is one that you want to try to at least get an idea of what the base, setup is going to entail. You want to think about that. For me personally, would I buy a table to play games in terms of a table size? Notwithstanding the fact that I did it already, but let's just say, say it wasn't that particular table. I would want a nice, sturdy, flat table with a decent amount of surface anyway. So you want to make sure. And again, I understand not everybody has room for that. So I get it. But it is something that you want to think about. Hey, where are we going to play this thing? And are we going to have space? Because a game that needs you to have, at a glance, look at all of your stuff in order to really enjoy the system, in order to not feel like it's fiddly, as a lot of people say, it needs it in a certain way. If you don't have room for that for everybody, if everybody's moving back and forth between 2 and 3 trays and, they're balancing stuff on their laps or stuff's across the room or it's up behind them on a shelf, that's going to affect the experience negatively. So you want to make sure that you've got the room to play the type of game that you're trying to play. Again, it's something in the back of your head. I would not buy a game because I don't have the table yet, simply because, games are going to go out of style before tables do.
Right.
So if it's something that you really want to play, don't not get it because you don't have the table yet. Go on and get it if you're worried about the space. And then like what Alex said, there are groups. You can ask around. You can go to coffee shops. If there's a game cafe, if there's a game store, there's ways you can get around that until you can do it in your own home. Some people we're talking to who are listening to us, they don't want this kind of stuff in their house anyway.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking, hey, I want to play with 7 people, but I don't know them.
Yeah.
And so it may not be a thing, but just
I think table size and storage space is key because most campaign games have a wealth of content. Specifically like the ones that we talked about with numerous expansions. So realizing that, you're going to have to store this stuff, but also how to, like most campaign games, a lot of cards, and so I use a lot of extra tables. I bring in folding tables just to store sort of the in between the game systems that you involve.
I got a big old one table.
Yeah, and so that there's the possibility of that. But typically, now there are some games that don't do this. But again, I keep going back to the Initiative. Initiative is such from Corey Knizia, it's such a unique and streamlined campaign game. I think that's a great entry level into that. But so I think through that. But I think my Shadows of Brimstone, it is a table hog in every sense, form, and fashion. And so having to you need
at least it tells you that with the box.
Yeah. So
it's like the old coffin boxes from FFG. They announce what they are before you ever get them to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, do a little bit of research, and especially like games with expanding maps as the map tiles build out, and
that's one of my favorite things. Love it.
Just be aware, okay, maybe we need to find some other table solution. So it's just, again, it's just so that you can make an informed decision, because we don't want you to get in there and go like, well, I have this, but I have nowhere to play it. And then that also sort of just kind of moves into the next thing. Some games, specifically, and this, you have this problem in campaign games. Some games like don't necessarily come with a useful way to quote unquote save the game between playthroughs.
It's a fairly recent design trend that I love.
Right, absolutely. But I'm going to tell you this right now, like that is another thing you just to consider is how do I keep this so that I can make setup and teardown easier in my future, just to get to the game quicker, because that is a pretty significant barrier to playing a game. Some campaign games, it's, a 15-minute setup. Unless you have another storage solution. But that's why I love Plano boxes. I think Plano boxes are fantastic. Even like something as simple as like printing off, little paper tuck boxes so that you can like save character cards, and like you can just print them off, cut them up, tape them down, and then
another Larry confession time.
What you got, Larry?
I have had the first edition fan-made tuck boxes from BGG printed professionally at like Kinko's on heavy stock cardstock for the original Agricola since I bought the game.
And you've not made them?
They are still in an envelope from Kinko's with the two-sided tape that I have been looking for off and on for the last however long it's been, 10 years. Thinking, I have some two-sided tape somewhere. It's down in there.
It's in the box.
There's a pair of scissors down in there. I said, I thought I had some scissors.
Listen, I am so glad that you're able to confess these things. Do you feel better?
I done bought another pair of scissors. So eventually, I'm going to put together those original tuck boxes for Agricola.
But again, tuck boxes are a cheap solution to
They're fantastic.
Some of that storage unit, storage
Make them out of cardstock though, people. Don't use paper.
But then again, even just plastic bags, like little sandwich baggies. I mean, I use that.
Oh, never ever use sandwich baggies. I'm going to strike that from the record.
Why?
Objection.
Why?
Sustained. You're overruled. You're out of order.
Why? I use
sandwich baggies. The name says it all. They're for sandwiches, man.
Oh, okay, whatever.
You don't eat board game components. How many times? Dude.
I still use sandwich baggies in a lot of my campaigns.
Oh, my God, I know.
Especially to separate player pieces.
I couldn't wait
things.
To get rid of those sandwich baggies in your copy of Terraforming Mars. Oh, my God.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. That's fine.
Dude.
All right, so... But again, saving the game in between playthroughs is something that you need to consider, and I would also, throw that into your sort of your cost analysis.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a flaw. It's a flaw.
But I mean, like Imperial Assault, it so much benefits from having Plano boxes. Because I can put the minis in there, and then also with the dividers, you can divide up the smaller cards, and it's just been a significant lifesaver. It's eventually Shadows of Brimstone. I'm going to be moving into Plano boxes.
Wow, you know what's funny? What you just thought about the more modern systems and the better systems for saving the state of the game, they help you keep the integrity of the play session.
Yes,
sessions.
Exactly. Because otherwise,
just putting it in and using your cell phone to take a picture, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that you can't put the game back that way. So every game can do it because you can do it yourself. But what we're talking about is there's some modern games. We're both going to have some on our list where designed into the rule set, there's something that lets you keep it's designed for it. The very cards you're using, the very state of the game, so that the integrity of the play session can, as closely as possible, stay the same.
Yeah, and one game I'm going to give out a shout out because it didn't make any of my other lists, but I think is a credit to that very point is Oath by Letter Games.
Okay.
Oath is, in all essence, it is a campaign game because it tells an overarching story, but it's each game session you are kind of building your kingdom and all of this, but it is meant to be like the game is designed to be saved specifically in a unique way it's baked into its design system.
Yeah.
And so Yeah, and I think that's a modern trend that I would like to see a whole lot more of.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, I really enjoy, like I said, because again, I've been there taking the pictures with the cell phone camera. It worked for getting us back to the table. When my copy of Fortress America has a handwritten sheet from the last time we played it.
Oh, that's fun. So
that's in the box right now. Yeah. So I mean, there's always been a way to do it, but like I said, and again, that's when I said a minute ago that it's not a flaw. I meant I don't think it's a flaw for games that don't have it, because this is fairly modern.
Yeah.
And some of the games, that's part of their thing. That's part of their hook, is that, hey, you can save the game state, but I'm with you. What you just said puts a perfect cap on this section.
And I think
I want to see more games do this, because it's fantastic.
Ryan Lucat's Sleeping Gods is fairly new and does that as well, if I'm not mistaken. And that's one, like, I've just seen so many amazing things as far as a campaign is concerned. Okay. So the Sleeping Gods, there's a new one that just came out on GameFound. It's the Air version, but yeah, so that one I think does that as well. Again, more modern trend. So the last thing we want to talk about briefly is the difference between a campaign game and a legacy game, because I think that actually does bear some discussion, because we've talked about legacy games at length, but just because it's a legacy game doesn't mean it's necessarily a campaign game. So, for instance, things that I think about that are legacy games but are not campaign games. Remember, we talked about campaigns being sort of narrative driven, and in their understanding of things, you're telling one unique story, opposed to player stories, which we can talk about. I think Larry had a really interesting point. So we'll have a little sort of end of the discussion about Sentinels of the Multiverse.
You are tiptoeing on the line, my friend.
Yeah. Okay, but so legacy versus campaign. So I'm going to throw Risk Legacy out. It's sort of the granddaddy of all the legacy games. But Risk Legacy, the legacy component, though there are changes to the board and the factions do grow and change.
It's a campaign.
There is. I don't think it is.
It is.
I don't believe it is.
It is.
Because there is no overarching story.
Well, of course there is.
No, there's not.
Every single board is telling its own different story. Yes, there is.
But then
that group that's playing at your table.
This gets into the discussion of what I was just talking about, of narrative.
And again, I'm just putting counterpoint. I'm not trying to go back and forth here. I'm just saying I think it is a campaign game.
But here, again, I want to come back to this, because I think you're absolutely. There's a valid discussion here about player-driven campaigns versus designer-driven campaigns. So Risk Legacy is a legacy game in which you move from game to game and the components change. Okay, but there's really no overarching story. By the end, you haven't reached this major conclusion outside of what is developed with the players. I have the same thing with Charterstone. Charterstone allows you to, it's a really fun.
I know of it, and I know he does a recharge pack.
Yeah. But again, the game changes, its state changes from game to game based on choices, but there is no overarching story baked in. Now, it does encourage the players to start their own narrative. A very recent one that I think kind of falls into this category too is Jurassic World, The Legacy of Isla Nublar. That's the Ravensburger version of Jurassic World. It is a legacy game.
I ain't played it yet, so I can't say.
Well, yeah, it just finished Kickstarter, but but that one, based on all the things, there's no overarching story outside of the narrative created by the players.
Hey, man, don't forget about Seafall.
Now, I actually was thinking about Seafall. Now, I think Seafall does the same thing. There is no, I never played it, but was there
I have.
Was there text in the story?
Yeah.
Okay, so Seafall would be a campaign game. So everyone is working within the confines of what the designer and the story the designer wanted them to do. One game that I think is a legacy game but is a campaign game is Betrayal Legacy. So Betrayal on House on the Hill, the legacy version, it is actually telling a narrative journey, a narrative arc from story to story. And though, your players kind of change and do all of these kinds of things.
Right. And this is all I'm trying to put. I want to make sure I make this clear.
Let's get into this idea of narrative created by the players versus by the designers.
Yeah, what I'm trying to point out is exactly what you just said has nothing to do with it. The point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that there are different types of, campaigns versus Legacy. And that's why Risk Legacy, from the point of view that I'm coming from, is absolutely a campaign game because, again, you're telling the story. That board, every board is unique, and every board has its own story. And if you play that with the same group from start to finish, when you're done and you have your own custom Risk board, there's a campaign there, and it's being created. It's no less valid than whether it came out of the box with the word campaign written on it. It's no less valid. It's doing exactly the same things that your hallmarks of your campaign games. It's got your progression. It's been narrative driven, right? And then, of course, you can play single and unconnected scenarios once you're done with the board. But that individual board, because it's placed individually on each one of those boxes that was sold, and not necessarily, hey, listen, this is what we do. I say the view is that is a Legacy game that is a campaign. Campaign versus Legacy is a very, very valid, point for us to be talking about. That's the thing. That's what I was trying to get you to say. I'm not really trying to do point counterpoint. I'm just saying there's another version of each of these things that we're talking about. And for me, having played it, Risk Legacy is one that fits into both. And I think it's very valid to be thinking about both, because you're right. I don't believe necessarily that one has to be the other. But that particular instance of one, in my own personal experience, absolutely is both.
So here is one thing that I would like to just add to this piece of the conversation, is that so when it comes to Legacy games, when it comes to a lot of different games, there is a difference between player-created narrative versus designer-created narrative.
What's the value, though? What's the value?
Just let me finish. Okay. So ultimately, there will be and I think this is one of the things to consider. Do you, and this isn't you, this is the generic you as the consumer, do you have the ability and the creative spark to tell the story without someone writing out the words for you? So for you were able to, based on all of the things that were augmented and changed and played, the ebb and flow of your game of Risk Legacy.
It had nothing to do with mind space. That's what happened on the board.
There is no written text that tells you that this happens.
Doesn't matter though.
Hey buddy. Listen. All right. Okay. I think we're experiencing a time when you're dug in, and
again, I'm just trying to get the view out there. You're coming at this like I'm trying to change your point of view, and I'm really not. And you're coming at it like I'm saying that your point of view is now valuable, which again, I'm not doing. All I'm saying is there is a different version of what you're talking about also that can coexist along with what you've said. That's really all I'm doing. I mean, I'm not the whole versus thing and button heads thing. I'm not that has nothing to do with what I'm trying to do. There's just 2 points of view. Your point of view that you came across with first is not the only one that's valid, is what the point is. We need to put out more than one point of view. That's all I'm doing. Again, it's not a matter of trying to point heads, buddy. Because not everything is like that at all. That's all, man. Just get some water, man. Calm down. Here, man. Have a drink of Uncle Near's. Oh, wait, I must be talking to me. I'm the one with that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the coffee, by the way. Oh, I done messed up. People gonna be coming for me. It's the coffee. It's Uncle Near's coffee. It's delicious. It's not the other stuff. Just saying.
Cool.
I would give you a hug if we was in the same room.
Oh, you actually hugged me?
Yeah, I put you in the eye when I got finished, but I hugged you.
That's fair enough. I'd slap your butt, but that's okay.
We'd be fighting for real. You do that. I was a dude running with his hand behind his back when I played sports in high school. No joke. Man, don't hit me on my butt, man. I don't play that. Nobody hits my butt but my mama, and she ain't done it since I was 4.
So hopefully that's a number of things for you to consider when thinking through.
I know we will.
Is an epic, is a campaign game for you. Because again, we love them. Larry and I both absolutely love from the ones that are created by designers to the games that are that are created in our own brains. And
creatives will. That's the beautiful thing of it.
And one of the things you talked about pre-show that I thought was amazing, and I'd never even thought about that. Like, there are games that aren't designed as campaign, but absolutely lend themselves almost to it. And like you mentioned, Sentinels of the Multiverse, and I wanted to give you a little bit of time just to really kind of make a pitch why Sentinels is actually a secret campaign game.
Right, and you know what's funny? That's a good way to put it. I don't know this for sure in the design. I don't know if they had planned to do it this way all along, but I do know what the game ended up with. Basically, as a comic book universe, as a the Sentinelverse, I guess you want to call it. People want to say the Marvelverse or whatever, but they were leading up to a universe-ending event that the heroes needed to come together, and even some villains came together with the heroes to fight one dude whose purpose was to come and annihilate everything. And Oblivion was a character's name. So that last box and those last few sets in the last year of the first ed, I think it's all now in the revised edition. But those last few boxes really kind of crystallized that in terms of what they were leading up to, because they introduced the cosmic heroes. They were his scions, like in Marvel, when Galactus sends out his scions. They fought his scions. His scions came, and then there's story beats where some of the scions changed and came to help the heroes, and some of the old villains that they had beat from the earlier days, from the first few boxes, the first few expansions, they showed back up in different forms that were now here saying, "Hey, this crazy thing is coming. We're don't fight me. I'm here to help, because he's gonna kill all of us if we don't." And so then Oblivion came, and that Oblivion box is very much that. It is the end of their multiverse, as it were. And it tells that story. The Oblivion character card, the character cards in Sentinels of the Multiverse, for those of you who don't know, it's a card-driven game. The character cards for the villains are oversized. They're really big cards, even bigger than Tarot. They're huge. Well, the Oblivion's card is that size. It itself is a comic book. His character card is like 5 pages.
Oh, wow.
And you play it. It's not like, read it and put it down. It plays on the table. It's got all the stats on it, but his different formats and his different everything is contained in his card. That's literally itself a little comic book, because of so much stuff that's going on. But it wraps up the narrative, quote unquote, of the multiverse. And so now you've got a start to finish when you look at the whole product. And again, like I said, I can't say the Greater Than was doing that, from the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah, but it makes total sense. I mean, you look at like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, it had its each individual things, and they sort of loosely connected. But then as it grew and grew and grew, it was like, we have to connect these. And so then when you look at it from the sort of the end of things, you're like, oh, well, there's obviously an arc, and then you can, with that information, you can go back and start from the beginning and create that narrative campaign. And the beauty of it, because you're right, but the beauty of it is, again, it's kind of the same of the sticking point that we had with Risk Legacy, or the interesting conversation we had, is that as you're going through, if you bought everything, or even if you didn't, let's say you bought the base set and you checked out, maybe you got villains, and then maybe you got the end. Each one of those, though, is building up. They're still building up to Oblivion. That's the point. Yeah. When you get there, you're thinking, oh, well, duh, yeah. Again, if you've played it all, then you'll have relationships along the way. Like I said, where people are coming back. The Scions were first villains. Now they're not. One of the main characters, Omnitron, it got an evil version. It's a computer. Now it's helping. It's a hero. You got all of these things that are built up, and so all of these things, like you said, lend themselves to a rich tapestry. They were there. They weren't that deep. But saying it's a secret campaign game may be right. Because, again, I don't know. I don't know that, Greater Than said, hey, this is what we're going to do. But it does have that feeling. Being someone that's a fan of comic books, being someone who appreciates that game as the best comic book superhero board game in existence for me. And you know how much I love Legendary, but I think Sentinels is a better game for it. Particularly that there's a start and that there's an end. Because, like you said, that's what they've done. They've done a start and they've done a finish. So squirrel moment, except it's not a squirrel. So I think that's part of why when you said campaign games, and then I looked at the definitions, I'm thinking, oh, well, yeah, no, that is Sentinels. Yeah. Because that's what I experienced as we were going. And I think that's important too. Like, you can turn, almost any game in your collection might have an option, to do that. So, all right, well, we have talked every which way. So after the break, we're going to come back and we're going to tell you our favorite campaign games to play at certain player counts. So Stick with us. We'll be right back. I should do everything like epic this week. And we are back.
Back. All right. We got some games to do.
That's true. Hey, Larry, let's try it because last episode we were a little off. But
I think it's the audio, yeah.
You think it's the audio? Okay,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not only we don't just do like a top 10 list, a top 5 list. No. When we do a list, we do the top 3. We do the cream of the crop, the best of the bunch. We don't just do a good list. We do a
super good.
This distance thing is not working for us.
Well,
All right.
you know what's funny? We got to say it. I bet if we took our headphones off
Yeah.
and just said it the way we're used to saying it,
Yeah.
it would
Well,
be
you-
spot on.
it's-
Because we're
it's
trying to
like-
listen to each other, and I think we've got a delay now.
Yeah. You kind of go a little bit longer than I'm used to, but it's okay. It's all right. But what we're doing a top 3 list, and we've got 3 different categories. We do. We have campaign games, best at 1 player,
Solo.
best at 2 to 3 player, and
Yes.
best at 4 to 5 player.
Woo-wee.
So we're going to just run through these at a midland pace, but not we're not going to linger too long.
He
But
said
hopefully we will give you enough ideas if you are wanting to start a campaign game that you could look and say, hey, based on the number of players I know I can get to the table, these are some options. And these are ones we've played and or watched significantly from afar to genuinely be able to recommend these with good conscience.
And let me give a quick program note.
Yeah,
These
yeah.
will be, because there's so many games, these are going to be listed in our they will be listed in the show notes, but they won't have our usual full information with them, but they will be links. So click on the links and go and look up all these games.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so I'll start with my list. They're in no particular order. So our top 3, well, I guess I do have to put, no, they're all super good and they're in no order, but these are the ones I think are best played solo. First and foremost would be Seventh Continent. It's just a wonderful exploration game. It's got a lot of twists, a lot of turns. The reason I suggest playing this at solo is I think it's just you don't need other players to really fill out and experience the content that is there. And so I think this is an easy one to get to the table at your own pace. The next is the Lord of the Rings, the card game. And now I'm a small caveat here. I think this one is best played solo, but playing 2 playable characters. So basically playing 2-handed, meaning that you are playing as if 2 players were playing, but as just a single player playing. So Lord of the Rings, the card game, playing this with 2 hands, you're able to really interact the way a lot of the cards want you to. You can engage the scenarios in a really great way. You get to experience the game fully as it was meant to be experienced. But again, you are going through the campaigns, especially with the new stuff. It's really campaign focused. There's definitely progression moving forward. And then finally, I just keep coming back to my favorite solo game of all time, and that is the Legacy of Holt. It is such a great game. I mean, it's akin to Choose Your Own Adventure, but with so many mechanics that really make it feel like you are playing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, a beautiful, incredible story. So that one for me is, I would, if I had to put my top, like, what do you play solo for a campaign? Absolutely Legacy of Holt.
Okay.
All right, Larry,
okay.
what do you got for your solos?
I am, do I want to do my solos?
Yeah, yes, you do. I think that's what the show demands.
Oh, okay. Well, if y'all demanding, y'all being awful needy, but okay. We actually have the same game at the top, which is Seventh Continent,
Okay.
which I have started. I did get a chance to start it. It's one of the ones with a really cool save system. It's got the envelopes that let you pull the cards so that you keep the cards. The map and some of the things around the conditions change, which is a really neat addition that makes it seem like maybe you went into the cave at night. When you come out, maybe it's the next day. So some stuff will have changed, but the area, so some of the cards you save, but some of the ones you don't, and for that reason, so that time can pass. So it helps. So I really like that one. For me, Hostage Negotiator Career, really the whole series, but Career, of course, is what it's the one that's the campaign game, and that you take a hostage, young yourself, rookie hostage negotiator, and you go through a whole 10-year career or more. and you're going start to finish. So you're building up some things, some history. You have to deal with your family and some other things going on behind the scenes, which is really cool on that one, but based on the Hostage Negotiator, and I just love that system. And then my last one is one that Alex and I played together and I enjoyed, and I've played another game 2-player, which I also enjoyed, but I've also played it solo, and I think I put this one in the solo, and it got bumped by a game that's down in my 45 player range, and that is Zombicide Invader, which you get an opportunity to go through that narrative, because of course there's a narrative there, and
I forgot that had a narrative campaign.
Yeah, it's a narrative arc, and so you're playing
actually that's
mission.
built with the narrative arc in mind, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What we were doing was playing the first mission, and there's a couple other ones that are a little bit more obscure now that I'm thinking about it that I could have put here, but I did want to do Zombicide Invader.
I forgot about that one.
Space Infantry, actually, I'm going to mention it. Space Infantry is another one that I think that one comes in a little thin box, and it's paper maps and paper guys, but you're definitely dealing with a squad of 4 Marines, and you have a different interconnected series of maps that come up, and you're going and you're trying to do stuff fighting the xenomorphs. There is a second ed book out for those of you like me who own the first edition of that game in the box, and if you want to use the new rules, that book is expensive. That book is $70, and it's literally just a book. It's the new rules in a binder format. But that's another one that's space themed that's really cool, but it definitely draws a campaign, because if you lose guys, you can't call on them in future missions. I mean, your team composition changes, and they get stronger obviously as it goes.
Oh, that's cool. It's almost kind of like XCOM to an extent.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool. So that is it for solo. I'll jump into 2 to 3 player.
Yeah,
and then let you do yours. So my 2 to 3 players. This one, Sword and Sorcery, I've played solo. I really feel like 2 to 3 players is a sweet spot, or could be really good. I've enjoyed it solo, but I know 2 to 3 player on this one would be pretty special, because that turn order still, again, is so chunky and so magic to me that seeing other players play the other characters would be, because you still play with the 4 characters. So seeing other players play those other characters to me would be so satisfying to see the differences. Instead of me trying to say, well, I would play her this way, let somebody else really do it. I think it would be fantastic. The next one is the Twins, which is going to be Mage Knight and Star Trek Frontiers. Just depending on what flavor you want, whether you want the fantasy flavor, whether you want the sci-fi flavor. The con box for Star Trek Frontiers, which is its own medium box, or own big box expansion, the only one it got, is fantastic. It is so good. It tells a story right after the movie, Wrath of Khan. It talks about some things that happened, and it takes liberties with the lore, and it's really, really good. Would have been an amazing movie, actually. It's fantastic. And then the good old venerable Mechs versus Minions.
Oh, yeah. I'd forgotten about this one until you put it on your list. Absolutely 100%.
Yeah, which is another one with a good save system.
Yeah.
They've got a neat save system, so you can get right back into the game. Program movement.
Yeah, honestly, I believe this is my favorite programmed movement game of all time.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think how many I've played. Because we had Lords of Zid in our possession, but we never got a chance to get it to the table. That's what it does. But we didn't get to play it. And I'm trying to think how many other games have we played?
I've played a number of program movement, but regardless,
I have to stop and think about it.
No, but Mechs and Minions is just it's one of the best quality productions.
Yep.
Is ahead of its time. Ahead of its time. Absolutely ahead of its time.
It really is. All right, you're 2 and 3 players, sir.
All right, my 2 and 3, which I want to just kind of throw this out there. I think 2 to 3 players is the sweet spot for me when it comes to campaign games, because again, consistency, but also time around the table. And so for me, all right, I could not narrow this down to 3. I had to put this. I had to do 4.
What?
I know. I pulled a Larry. So first, again, these I am going to put in a particular order. So I'll do my my honorable mention first, and that's the Pathfinder adventure card game. I think this one, it tells a fun story on each of them. It's unique gameplay. I really, really like how it takes the Pathfinder sort of tropes and character building and the way that it does it, but still has some dice rolling in it. It does tell a story and walks through it. So that's my honorable mention for 2 to 3 players. Now, outside of that, so my number 3 is going to be Gloomhaven. The only reason Gloomhaven is number 3 is because Gloomhaven is such a commitment. It is such a commitment to truly experience the things that it wants you to experience.
Yes, it is.
So having 4 players, like, can you get them together for the 100 hours plus that there are? the game takes it's got a really unique card mechanic system, but then there's some things that go around. But I think 3 players is where Gloomhaven really shines, because everyone can be unique and they can grow and get better, but then you can affect the battlefield in really unique ways. But time to play. My number 2 is oh gosh, where is my list? There we go. Any of the Pandemic Legacies. Pandemic Legacy. Those are legacy games that are meant to be played in a particular order and tell an overarching story. And there is narrative to it. And I think at 2 to 3 players, Cynthia and I have played through 1 and 0. We just enjoy it. We love it. I think at 3 players that it's a great sort of co-op. Let's do this together. And then my number 1, this is definitely my number 1. This is in order, 2 to 3 players, Shadow of Brimstone. It is, now, interestingly enough, no, I'm not even going to put that caveat there. Yeah, campaign game, it's Weird West, so you've got cowboys, you've got Lovecraftian horrors, but then there's a progression system, an item system. It is so chunky, and there's dice rolling and miniatures and all of these things, and with the frontier town, truly epic. There's a fan-made content called Hex Crawl. If you don't know about that and you're a Shadows of Brimstone player, go reach out. That is that takes the narrative that's already the narrative and the campaign that's already there and just expands it. I mean, exponentially. So there's so much content there. You'll never experience it all. So that's my best 2 to 3 players. I think if you play more than 3, the table gets way too crowded. There's just room-wise, times between turns, and it gets a little funky. But no, Shadows of Brimstone at 3 is just...
We need to get a big old 5-player game going and see if that's true.
Okay.
I got room. I got room.
Yeah.
Bring it on out here.
Speaking of 5 players, let's move on to the last portion of our list, which is the 4 to 5 player games in the campaign setting. Yeah. All right. Here is my. All right. Again, these I can't put in any particular order. Okay. My not number 1, but one I think is it's the smallest box of anything that we have mentioned, and that is The Crew. So this is the campaign-style trick-taking game. So it is meant to be played in order. It's cooperative trick-taking. And so there's also there's a space version. There is a new undersea version. Guys, this is one my family has just played time and time again. And every time we're like, okay, let's just do the next mission. Let's just do the next mission and the next mission. And so you track it in your book. So that's The Crew. Next, I mentioned this one earlier, and that's the Initiative. So this is
Wait a minute. Back it up. Hold up. So in The Crew, I mean, is it narrative in the book?
Yes, in the book.
Or are they just missions?
No, they like it says, okay, you have now done this. Okay, your next mission says that you have blast off. Now you're going past a certain belt and you have to do these things. So it has to be played in order. So it's so good. It's so brilliant.
I mean, we've played it.
Yeah.
I played it. I know you
don't like it.
You guys love it.
Yeah.
Well, it's trick taking, so.
Yeah, it's true, yeah. So, all right, I go back to the Initiative. This is, mentioned this one earlier. This one is kind of a game within a game. So there is a game that your character is playing, which I think is fun. But then that character is going through this really cool comic book that with secrets and puzzles that you have to unfurl. It's so good. And the reason I put this at the 4-player is because the game plays so quickly. It's a cooperative game. It plays so quickly that
it felt good at 2.
Yeah, it feels great at any player count. But at 4 players, that you get to use all of the abilities really well, and it moves so quickly. Turns aren't an issue.
I can see that.
So, I really enjoy that one at 4. Okay, next up are the ones I think you need to be playing at 5-player. And so that, for me, is Imperial Assault. You need that 5th player. because you have a full team of 4 to play each of the unique heroes, but then you have to have that 5th player to play as the Imperial player. So having that odd number really, really makes a difference. And it's so much fun to really play the system, play the players, and that the progression system is wonderful.
Yeah, what we played through, man, that gaming experience definitely stands out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It stands out. It was fantastic.
Absolutely.
It was. It really was. It was so satisfying. It was really good.
And then my next one actually this is my final one on my list for the 4 to 5 players. Again, I suggest playing this one at 5 players. Is the King's Dilemma. Oh wow.
Yeah, 5 games.
I just took one off because I mentioned it earlier, and it doesn't need to be on my list. The King's Dilemma at 5 players. It is a continuing story that and players progress, they change their houses, but having it at that 5th player means that when you are actually voting on things, there is always the ability for someone to sway someone else. That majority rules thing. I think playing it at 4 players was fun. That's what I played it for. But playing it at that 5th player, it's just a necessity. It's just a necessity. There's
Very
nothing
cool.
else like it. The overarching story and you again progressing, getting better, stronger, and the ending was so climactic. So those are my best of my not just good but super good games to be played at each player count. Larry?
Very, very cool. All right, I will do my 4 to 5 player. I mean, I kept it to only 3 on this one. So we'll start again. They're not in any specific order. We've talked about one of them, which is Sentinels in the Multiverse. 4 to 5 players, so good. It's just so stinking good. 4 to 5 players, you've got a team in there, whether you're doing it the villains, where you're alternating, where the game alternates the villains and you got 4 heroes, or whether you're just playing an extended session with heroes, and then you have, of course, your villain, and you also, of course, in that game system, you always get something from the environment as well. It's just so good, so good. The next one actually is Thunderstorm Quest. I've played a bit solo. I don't mind it solo. I'm glad that I have it, but I really feel like that one will be a lot stronger at 4 to 5 players. Well, 4 players probably. I didn't really break them down to 4 to 5. I think all of these would be good either way. I think that one will adequately probably handle 5 players, but I really feel like Thunderstorm is probably going to be better at 4. And then my last one is the one that bumped Zombicide Invader up to the solo list, which is Gears of War. And I know Gears of War is hard to get. I get it. If you can get a copy of it, do it.
That hand management system is so good.
It is so good. Even
So
at
good.
2, it was amazing at 2, but I've played it at 3, and I know 4 to 5 would, well, we won't do 5, but 4 would just be so stinking good on that one. So
And that's
that
a
one,
sleeper for campaign because
It really is.
When you pick up the box, you don't think that there's a narrative campaign to it. But
if you haven't played the video game.
yeah. No,
But again, it's like StarCraft.
Yeah,
it's
that game-
based off the video game, so it's got a campaign in it. Yeah, but it's so
good. It's real
good. It's so good. So
cool.
good.
So I think the customary wow is in order.
Yeah, man, we have previewed the summer episode that's
I'm
pretty
excited.
hefty.
I am
Pretty hefty.
really pumped about this summer. And so we have so many things in store for you. We will come with our full list of things that you can be looking forward to with our first official Summer of Games episode. But we are so thankful that you spent some time listening to us talk this afternoon. And for the Spoken Token, I'm Alex Wallace saying keep playing.
And this is Larry Neal saying keep communicating. This has been the Spoken Token Podcast. If you would like to interact with us, please find us at Facebook at The Spoken Token, on Instagram at The Spoken Token Podcast. Our Twitter account is at The Spoken Token. Email is thespokentokenpodcast@gmail.com. And our BGG guild number is 2656.
Listening to a Pod Studio One Podcast Network podcast. Find more great podcasts at www.podstudio1.com.